So first, you saw him before as well. He's from SAP. He has extensive experience in India and in China, across the Asia Pacific, but it's also has a very good network within the big company SAP. Clas Neumann, ladies and gentlemen. Super Clas. Super Clas. He was called here on the front row. I would never dare to say that. And then the other company here on stage on the panel is Daimler, also proud sponsor, of course, and we're having Björn Avermark, and he's from Daimler Mobility Services. Björn, warm welcome to you. And then you saw him before, Cedrik Neike. Give it up for Cedrik again, ladies and gentlemen. So the aim, of course, in this panel is not only to hear them talk, right? Because as startup, you probably have many questions for them as well. So we will do some Q&A, so please think about questions that you might have, and then we can, because the aim is, of course, to learn also from each other. So through your question, we could also learn what you are concerned about and want to talk about. And it keeps it nice and interactive. But first of all, Cedrik, you're very modest in your speech because you didn't really go into detail about what the aim is with the whole project, because it's also for Siemens internally, of course, it's a huge project, it's a different location, but it's more, right? There's a real thought behind it. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that?
So the idea of Siemensstadt, and I didn't go into more detail, and Karina is actually the person which can help us most about it. What we said is 100 years ago, we wanted to have living, producing, and learning all together. That was the idea. So we redefined actually what a production process and a learning process would be. Now, 150 years later, what we wanted to do is to say, look, we're going to build 600,000 additional square meters of apartments. We will have factories here. We will have universities here, and we have also training centers. Here's the biggest training center of Siemens in Germany. And we want to redefine what actually the future of work would look like, in which you work, produce, and do the research in the same environment. And we call it an industrial smart city. It's because we believe that what happened is a lot of the industrial production was kicked out of the big cities, was kicked out and went into all around the world, and it's actually with 3D printing and other capabilities will come back into the cities. So we have to rethink what the future of this will be, and we want to actually do it in Berlin. Now, in order, and this is why this is today, it's important, we cannot do it alone, because we think where before everything had to be invented by Siemens, I mean, we helped invent the electrification, we now need to have partners to be able to do it. Big partners, small partners, medium partners, universities, startups, and that's the idea which we have.
Yes. So if you're standing in the back, please come forward, because we have a
the best
first
seats
row
are in the
here,
front, actually, yes.
and they're really comfortable. So please come forward, because this is actually, yeah. Just have a seat. Yeah, you can really lounge here, and
there's cushions.
Actually, you could live stream from here if you wanted to. I mean, then you have really the best seats in the house. So, when it comes to SAP Clas, I mean, this international collaboration, which has been like the main topic, of course, throughout the whole week. But I mean, what is the current status, in your opinion, on how this is working within SAP? How are all the regions within SAP benefiting from this global collaboration? We've sent you the questions, right, or not? Or,
no, because I looked so surprised.
Yeah, you looked so, okay.
I can give you my answers.
We can exchange here a little bit.
Do you want me to ask another question?
You don't know. It's okay. I think this is my job, so I should be able to find an answer to this question, right? Because indeed, what sets SAP apart, I think, from most, or I would say even all large IT companies, is that we have completely distributed our software development across the globe. So this is really unique in many respects. So we have currently 19 SAP labs in 17 countries. Also a number of countries in Asia Pacific, right? We do software development today in Bangalore, India, but also in Pune, in Mumbai, in Gurgaon, but then also in 3 locations in China, in South Korea, and to a small extent also in Singapore. And we do this because we believe that we need a huge diversity of talent, right, like we have in this room here, because people think differently, but also to have access to all these different ecosystems. This makes, for us, a lot of sense. I mean, I see Ms. Helvig Bötte there, our Consul General. You will see her later on stage, I heard.
Over there.
Then
Yes. Yes.
in Bangalore, right? When we have startups, they're working with us. We cannot bring everybody here to Berlin, as nice as it is, right? But it's very often unpractical. They won't get visa from Ms. Helvig Bötte to start with. No, but this is not so easy. So to go out there and bring ideas where the people are, this is the main aim, and this is why we do this. And now I could speak another half an hour how we collaborate, but I leave this maybe for the next round of questions.
Okay. Yeah, but that's super nice of you, because indeed it's nice that also the Mr. of Daimler can say something, Björn.
Mr. Daimler.
Yeah, Mr. Daimler. Yeah, Björn Daimler Avermark. Yeah, we've rebranded people this week already, so it's no problem. We can do this. So. I mean, a very open question, but when it comes to mobility services, we know that also the city of Berlin is going to be like a new important location for Daimler when it comes to mobility services. But you do also have a global presence, of course. So could you maybe explain a little bit how this now works at Daimler Mobility Services?
Yeah, totally. So Daimler Mobility Services actually started like 10 years ago with the invention of Car2Go. And so that was where we still have been a startup, where we reinvented the way of car sharing. It recently became a shareholding, so we made a joint venture together with BMW, and the location will be in Berlin. Because if you are in Germany, obviously Stuttgart and Munich might not have the scale to really have a mobility problem.
We need to give you the kudos for the new location, right? Because I mean, some Berliners know where it is. Yeah, it's actually in the heart of Mitte, like probably the most beautiful building. That must have been expensive.
Not for Daimler.
Yeah, actually there had been a lot of interest in that building, even among Daimler. So I think we had several divisions looking at the very same spot. So I think we started a bidding contest against ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we are very happy to have that place because it also attracts talents. I mean, people really want to be there.
And this was the reason also why you indulged in that specific building, because of talent?
Yes, actually it was one of the reasons, because majority of our workforce so far was either in Munich or in Stuttgart, and people are very local, and it was difficult for them to make a decision to move. Yeah. So we said it should be an attractive workplace, and it should be a place where mobility is a need and where it makes sense to reinvent it.
Okay. Now the collaboration with Asia and the input that you get from there and vice versa, how does it work?
So yeah, I think very similar to what SAP is having. We're having incubators, accelerators all over the world. Especially we want to learn from the local market what is the need specifically there. So we're not reinventing ideas in Germany and export them to Asia. It's also we are reinventing ideas locally where the problem statements are. And that also is true for mobility, because I mean, yes, we reinvented car sharing in Ulm, but that's probably not the solution that you need in Shanghai, because they have a complete different set of problems. I mean, there's number plate restrictions, so on and so forth. So car ownership is more problematic than it's here, so the value statement must be different. Yeah.
So I give you some time to think. So I want to know from you, as a startup, what would you like to do together with one of these three companies? So I will walk up to you and just ask you, okay, what would you need from them? But first, to give them a chance to think a little bit, what do you need specifically from startups? What areas, examples, or what are you really looking for?
Yeah, so as I'm already having the microphone, so what we're looking for is good ideas. I think the risk-taking attitude and the entrepreneurship, because Daimler is very successful, and that also makes us very risk-averse. So we are not willing to risk our brand and take probably bets that a startup would willingly take, because they don't have as much to lose as we do. So therefore, we are looking for startups which are hungry to test new ideas, and we're going to support those.
Yeah, but actually, you know, hearing Daimler say that it's the biggest threat is that we are just doing too well is, I think, amazing in itself, right? Is it at mobility service that you feel this way, or is it across also in the production locations and the factories where they are still so proudly producing all kinds of vehicles that many people think of that they will be not necessary anymore in 5 years.
No, I think that's the mindset we have already realized a couple of years ago, and we started changing it, so we are well aware that it's not good to be complacent here. I mean, mobility services, we're not so proud of ourselves. I mean, we're very small compared to Uber, Lyft, Didi, and the rest of the world, so I think here we still can do way better, but when it comes to the car manufacturing side, I think they are the ones who have most to lose.
What do you need from the startups?
We focus, of course, on startups from the B2B area. That's very clear. So that's our focus and should also fit. And we need also, of course, we need startups which have great ideas and dedication. But I believe that's should be true for all startups, hopefully. And then it is also for us very, very important that, those startups go with us for some time, right? So not just throwing an idea over the fence, and we are also not interested to buy startups right away, but we need to create solutions for our customers, and we have 450,000 customers out there, right? Smaller ones, bigger ones, and we need, of course, startups who also understand the responsibility for those customers.
Yeah, and in comparison to a couple of years ago, where, for example, startups in Potsdam in an innovation center, for example, I know that they had to use HANA, and it was the software and it was too big and too expensive, but now you really let all of this go, right? It's really like, okay, come with your idea and we facilitate you, which is in itself a big step.
That is correct. I think we started with the idea, let's bring all startups on the best software platform of the world. But apparently it's really not suitable for every startup. And if they then spend the first 6 months in just trying to understand our software before they can develop their idea, that's not very helpful. Yeah, this is very clear. So indeed, today there are no preconditions, except that it should be a niche, some kind of a business behind that startup idea. That's very clear.
Yeah, I mean, if you know Siemens, we do everything, but we don't do fridges, we don't do mobile phones, just for you. That's not us anymore, that's just a name. But if you do something in energy generation, renewable energy ideas, that's a huge aspect for us. Healthcare, another huge aspect for us. Smart industries or smart infrastructure, digital industries or digital infrastructure. These are the main, and mobility are the main areas which we're interested. So it's extremely broad. But I would like to take this question and go even further. So how do you interact with us? What do you do? Mm-hmm. So the first one, we have actually, it's called Next 47. We were created in 1847. I don't know where Robert is. Is Robert? Yeah. Robert, so he's our partner. He has €1 billion. And if you need cash, he's the right person to go to, right? In terms of a startup. He's our incubator. No, but it's interesting because we're looking at key technology fields where we're not investing, where we put money in to be able to actually go in the right direction. The second thing which we also do is we take those investment or those startups and we scale them. So we would, I think, Clarity of Israel, we do in the security space, we do something. We have a blockchain company which we worked in Brooklyn, which we took to Australia. So we're using also the scale mechanism. The third one, we have a lot of fantastic engineers which don't get the money allocated even within Siemens to do something. We spin them out. So we take whole teams which have great ideas which are not in the main areas and spin them out. So that's 3 things which we do in the startups. The second one is to keep those startups close to us, we build those spaces. So you can come here, you can come up with new ideas. We help each other when we go to Africa or when we go somewhere else. That's another part. And the third one, this space will be even increased as we build places like Siemensstadt and others. So if you think of Siemens, think of us for money, think of us for capability to scale your ideas or complement your ideas. Think of us for having a space to actually be there, and we actually do buy startups. I mean, we bought a couple of startups lately. One is Comfy. We bought a startup in Brooklyn, which enables us to, through an app interface, to communicate with a smart building, and the smart building starts learning who you are, and the building actually adapts to you when you come in. It reserves a room, it puts the right temperature in, it puts all these elements in. So we are thinking of startups as additional investments, an ecosystem, and the capability to broaden our capabilities.
Yeah. And by the way, this is a full house now. Eh? I mean, really respect for the organization and the rain and all the other things. This is really, it's amazing that you guys all came out, and I'm really curious to...
Came out. Came in. I mean, it's not so far. You make it sound like it's the other part of Germany.
Who's paying my bill again? Okay, I won't comment on that. So I expect questions from you guys. So just stand up and tell us what you do, and then direct your question to one of these three guys. And I can help you also, of course. So don't be that shy. And otherwise, I'm going to force a couple of other force you to ask a question. But I mean, it's interesting. Yes. Okay. Very good. And I must say, I'm also moderating events, for example, in the United States and across Europe, and could also be a chance, right, for you guys to present yourself towards the audience,
Yes,
to possible customers, to investors. So it's a chance. Think about it.
Oh, I'm known for being loud. I don't need a microphone. But anyway, Photonic Insights, I build low-cost Raman spectrographic devices utilizing new photonic technologies. So what I need from someone like you is help for advancing TRL levels. 1, 2, assistance with intellectual property. I know how to file a utility patent. I need help with the really deep, hard patents. And 3, a corporate that understands future technologies, that specifically that understands photonic is the gateway to the quantum, and that quantum is going to be in production in 5 years. That's it.
But do you have for one of these guys a specific question?
No, specific. Okay, specific. Help with IP. So you're a startup.
Okay, let's
help with the IP.
help. Who of you can help with the IP?
So we have different types of IP. I mean, Siemens is the #1 IP filing company in Europe, for example. I mean, we have 5.4 billion. So I'm sure that we could take some of 5.4 billion euros we invested in R&D, and we know on how to file IP. I haven't thought through on how we could help you actually file some critical IP and how to actually make sure that you file it in the right place in multiple locations. So perhaps Clas has some ideas around this. So that's something which we could do. In terms of photonics, we need to see. I'm very much. We have research fields and key fields, and Robert, which is sitting just in front of you, can actually tell you of how it fits. But if you can think of elements where this actually has a huge impact in production facilities, in capabilities, and I don't know, right? I mean,
no, I have the elements defined very clearly. Yeah.
You need to talk to us, and we should say, okay, is this a short-term, a long-term, a medium-term sort of activities? And we would love to talk to you.
The trick is it's long-term, so it's not quick turnaround like a digital solution, because ultimately you're making something physical. You're working with atoms. Like I believe the the CEO of Siemens was mentioning how we're still going to be producing things, and that's another challenge. This is going to take 2 to 5 years. It's one thing to make a proof of concept in 6 months. As you know, if you're designing your own integrated circuits, you have lead in.
Daimler.
I mean, we can certainly, we are not a hardware company, so I think, and we discussed also before, I mean, your solutions, the moment they actually become or have to sit on some kind of a platform, on a data platform, then we have a deal. There's no doubt about it. And in general, for patent filing, not so much for your specific photonics case, but in principle, we also support our startups then to say, hey, let's have first a scan, what's there, and then indeed where to file it has to be thought about, whether in the EU or in the US or both or in China. This is, of course, a very complex thing nowadays, and it's not so trivial, I would say. And the patent filing costs roundabout, if you do it globally, between $25,000 and $50,000. So it's also a significant amount of investment, so one has to think this well through.
So knowing how to work with that, because the question is when you're trying to build something, if I had 25,000 extra that I could throw at a patent, for me it's better to allocate 25,000 euros to engineering right now in order to get these prototypes launched. So this is something else where that can be helpful, that you're saying you can support with the patent, but also giving advisory to a startup. Like, could you advise a startup, okay, now
it's time.
You should reallocate that money for engineering to patent.
Yep.
Okay, but very helpful. Daimler, you want to respond to that? Yeah. Oh, yes, I see.
We can also take multiple questions. I mean,
Yeah, you can take more. Thank you so much. Thank you for being the first one. And please stand up. Sir, I'm going to hold the microphone.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Anthony Hayward from Hard Skills. A lot of talk about technology. I'd just like to talk about people, because as you know, the technology is going to transform a lot of the workforce, which means that machines will do a lot of the basic stuff, and that means the development of people is going to be critical. I do have a question to ask of Mr. Neike. I'm glad to say that we are part of, from Monday, Hard Skills is part of accelerator program for SAP. And what we do...
Neike is from Siemens, huh?
Yes, I know. I'm going to come back to him. My question's not so well structured, but what we do is help large enterprises develop their people in the modern global business skills, such as collaboration skills, agility, inclusion, critical thinking, sales, etc. And I'm going to ask Mr. Neike for specific help because our first target market is India. But I just wanted to raise the point that with all this...
Could you maybe use the point and formulate the question?
General question for the panel is, do they... any comments on this fact that the development of people becomes even more important now with the development of technology?
Yeah. And what do you do about it? Yeah.
So I can do it very quickly. I can start with a riddle. In a factory of the future, how many people do you need? What does an economist say? You need a man and you need a dog, or a woman and a dog. Why? Because you need the man or the woman to feed the dog and the dog to make sure the man doesn't touch anything, right? So why am I saying this is a joke? It's an economist joke. Fundamentally, the work which we defined is changing. So we have to, we have huge production facilities, and a lot will, robotics and et cetera, will actually change that environment. The same will happen with a lot of the white collars. Thanks to AI and other capabilities, a lot of the repetitive tasks will be automated. So we need to constantly think on how do we re-skill our workforce. And that's one of the things we want to do in Siemens is also how do you rethink this aspect of creativity, this aspect of collaboration, the aspect of coming up with an idea and putting it into production very quickly. We at Siemens spend $600 million every year, or euros every year, to retrain our workforce. And we get often asked, why do you do this? Why do you waste so much time on your talent? And the reality is we're seeing it in another way. So yes, we do, for multiple reasons. One, because whatever you're going to study today, my kids, 70% of the jobs don't exist even today. So we will have to constantly reskill our workforce.
Cool. And okay, we have 4 more questions.
Four more
now.
questions,
Yeah,
but let
yeah,
me go to the point, and
yeah.
it's an important is. That's one of the key questions we have to ask all ourselves is how do we make sure that we don't lose large parts of the population because we create jobs only for the IT population. What is happening today politically, which is scary, is because a large part of the population is being lost. So that's why I think this is an extremely critical question, which we have to answer, but you have to help us answer also.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've got it up to speed. We have 5 more questions even now. So short questions, short answers.
Very quick. So just 2 issues. One is I run a college in the Philippines. We're launching a program tied with a Spanish school and a US school. They spend a quarter in each city over 4 years. So 16 cities in all. We want Berlin to be one of those cities. How do we partner with you guys here with this wonderful space and work with the people here? That's question number 1. Question number 2, I'm also in electromobility mass transport. We're not in the private car space or the taxi space. We're in 20, 30-seater vehicles. How do you work with Daimler-Benz?
So quick question, talk to Karina.
Karina, yeah, okay.
Yeah, second question is, you probably have to talk to me, so I give you my card later.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, let's do it like that. Fine, cool.
Thank you. My name is Margit. I work for the German government in Bangalore. As this round was labeled the Elefantenrunde, I would like to address a small question to the elephants. What makes the big elephants like SAP and Daimler and Siemens rally together? What is your shared interest? Why are you sitting here together? And what does this mean for the venture of Siemens Stadt 2.0?
So first, big round of applause. You're famous. You're famous for the collaboration between Bangalore and India across all. Second one is because elephants never survive on their own. They're always in tribes. So we will have to work together, and they actually have to bring other people with them. I mean, we're past the time where a Siemens on its own can invent everything and just think, I don't care about what Daimler does, what SAP does. We're hugely dependent on each other, and we're hugely dependent on you, and that's why we sit together here.
So you're working together because you're afraid you're gonna die, right?
Yeah, no, but jokes aside, if you're not afraid of dying, if you're not afraid of reinventing yourself, you're in trouble.
We are also each other's customers. I mean, everybody buys stuff from the other one, and very deeply. I mean, Siemens is one of our oldest and best customers, and vice versa. We use also a lot of Siemens technology in our buildings, for example. Yeah? So I think there's lots we do together, and that is also why we have often same direction.
Yeah, and I think all three companies are in the middle of transformation and transition, and that's why it's always necessary to get the outside-in perspective, and that's why we are eager to partner and listen to startups, and especially also having the transition to Asia.
And one last point, Car2Go should extend their cars up to Siemensstadt, so that's one of the reasons why we have him here.
Yeah, I was looking for a parking spot earlier today. It was really upsetting.
Okay, no, but this got lost. Now I'm interested. Will you do so?
No, I was surprised that there is no location here.
Yes, and you were
outside the-
surprised, but are you going to solve this problem?
Yeah, I will address it. That's definitely for sure.
You will address it. Yes, very good. Thank you.
Sorry, I had to do it.
So myself, Jansi, I am from India. Strava Technology is my startup. We are more into the cybersecurity and space technology. So I want to really ask you this question, like as a startup like us, what type of collaboration you are actually expecting from us to the smart cities of the Berlin or some other part? Is it really like a strategic partner, or you want to make it as more collaborative to the other sectors also?
So, and I don't know your startups that well. I just know that the cybersecurity part is our biggest issue in IoT. As we are going to sort of put a lot of the industrial infrastructure into IoT, the securing of this infrastructure will be critical. If you can help us in any way, shape, or form, you're my new best friend.
What are you specifically looking for?
We are more into cybersecurity, but it is more for other startups who are presenting here. So how you are actually taking them to the next level is more like a strategic partner to the other area also, because it will be helpful for other startups who will be here. So they want to really know about that, other than the cybersecurity.
Yeah. In any way, just come up with a proposal. I will come to you, but this gentleman was first, and then I have the lady over there.
Okay. Hi, I'm Christoph. I'm with the startup Cooler. So first of all, it's not comprehensible to me why you don't work on fridges anymore. Secondly, we work on cooling technology that's thermally powered more generally. So it might still be interesting in the energy space. And the question is, you're working on a space for startups. Do you look at hardware specifically also? And could you throw in a spare welding workshop maybe?
No, but this is actually not a joke. It's one of the key parts is that we have physical infrastructure to build things here. I mean, of course, if you do some software elements, that's interesting, but we have a lot of the welding talent and capabilities here, and that's where we put it. So that's great. And the cooling technology, I would be very interested talking to you, because the reality is this is becoming a warmer world, which needs to then the cooling mechanism to counteract it. So even if we don't have HVAC technology, we're very interested to see what exists to be able to do that. So both element, yes, and would love to talk to you. Thanks.
Maybe Daimler and SAP can also, the more the hardware cases, how can you be involved in
talk
those
about
ones?
hardware, please.
Yeah.
I want to.
It's not an issue for us. No, in most of our startup accelerators, we also have access to maker spaces, right? We usually co-use this with other accelerators because it's often not worse, let's say, to buy a huge welding machine and then only once per month somebody's using it for a day. But we have these spaces in our access, and therefore, indeed, because often it is important that something needs to be built around, right? Not everything can be put into data. Even I know that.
Very good.
Yeah, and the Daimler hardware side, so you were asking, so I'm specifically from the mobility space. However, I think our colleagues from a car, trucks, and bus divisions, they're also having accelerators and incubators. And if there's anything where you feel like it's adjacent to these fields, I mean, I'm more than happy to reach out and to connect you to the right people.
Okay. We have two more questions.
Hi, I'm Lisa from Suncrafter, and I had the pleasure to watch an interesting talk from Johan Rockström, who is the scientist from Potsdam Institute for Climate last week at Republica. And he said the problem with the planetary boundaries is there's enough solutions, but they can't get seen. And one of the solutions to mitigate this is the policy corporate startup triangle. And this sort of made sense, but I wonder, what can this look like effectively, and what channels do you have with your companies to bring innovation to the top, to make it visible also from startups? And how can policy be taken into this triangle, into this equation? Thank you.
It's a very interesting triangle, I have to say. What is maybe the biggest issue of all large companies is that we tend to build up bureaucracy continuously, and we always fight against bureaucracy in-house. It's always someone will be always there who is not responding, who is not quick enough, who is maybe doesn't understand the topic and puts it aside and so on. So this is also in the startup interaction to reach the right person. It's not so easy. By the way, I have also 2 colleagues here from Berlin and from Shanghai, so please stand up for a moment, Kai and Lini. So if anyone wants to know more about those areas, I have also brought a few colleagues with me. Do you actually, Caroline is also here somewhere? Yeah, Caroline, so we have another colleague, and I don't know whether we have any more colleagues here. SAP, please raise your arms. Okay, no?
Over there,
fine.
there in the back, right, yes.
Okay, here, wonderful. So from the policy point of view, there is, fortunately, I don't see too much of policy issues right now in the collaboration with startups. I mean, this is obviously where we help startups is, for example, to navigate cybersecurity. Because there's lots of laws now coming. We have huge teams working with those policymakers, and here in those fields we can then also help, because there we have core expertise. And we do this also. We share our knowledge, and we try to help startups to navigate through that so that their product is also compliant. Because that's certainly something larger companies have learned over 150 years.
170.
170 years, or in our case, 48 years, how to make things compliant in this very complex world. And this is also very important.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. So we are very familiar with policies, because I think we normally tend to always work only in the very white zone. So gray zones are normally something that we would not really like to get into, because the risk of losing brand perspective here is too high. So definitely we are working very closely with compliance teams, with legal teams, also with governments, to really figure out where is regulations going to, especially now in the mobility space. I think that's something where you see a lot of changes, so we are always at the edge of it, but we would never really go beyond. So, and that's also where we would be able to advise startups, so we're working closely with startups and help them to really stay within the boundaries, but at least to go as far as possible to the white lines.
Thank you, Björn. Last question over here.
Hello, hi. I'm from India. We have a startup on smart mobility in India. Today, thank you so much. We're talking about German-Indian cooperation and all that. I wanted to just understand from your perspectives, individually or together, what do you think about, how does India position into the picture of your incubators, or how you were talking about growth for startups? Where does India really position into that?
So perhaps I start. I just came back from India yesterday and brought some fantastic Alfonso mangoes with me, and my team loves me for it. We're investing, Robert, it's one of our places we're investing with our Next 47 activities is actually in India. I always say in India, actually, it's run by an Indian. Our global development in India is run there. We're now looking, and in my previous job, I helped build the geo networks with Mukesh Ambani. So I think that India is extremely interesting because, very much like China, it's one of the few places, if you can scale something in India, cost and scale-wise, you can replicate it everywhere in the world. So we are really looking at India as an incubator of new ideas, but which have a different sort of business model to be able to make them really big very quickly. So we believe in it. We have a huge activity. We're publicly listed in India as Siemens, and we're looking for partners to drive as much as possible, especially in the area of digitalization, because there we see most of the activities in this direction.
Yeah, so far India was not our number one priority. So Daimler was mainly looking at the markets where we have biggest revenue stream so far, which is US, Europe, and China. So obviously these had been priorities in setting up incubators and also looking at investments in the mobility space. However, we are well aware that it's a very dynamic place. There's a huge population, and probably there is a huge friction in terms of mobility. So the next great idea is probably coming from India. So we are monitoring it, but so far haven't done an investment, but we have plans to.
And if you happen to be in Bangalore, just be our guest, of course, because that is one of our best startup studios we have. We have 20 in-house right now, but we interact with hundreds beyond this. Yeah, and actually totally SAP interacts currently with 5,600 startups across the globe. So the programs have a pretty deep reach meanwhile.
And Clas, you lived in India how long?
I lived for 12 years in India, yeah. So I have also some insights in a few things in India, yes.
Okay, give a big applause for our panelists, ladies and gentlemen, Cedrik, Björn, and Clas.